It is 9 a.m. in Tripoli, 2 p.m. in Hanoi, and 4 on a Thursday afternoon here in Seoul. Welcome to the newscast. I'm Kim Hyun-ji. In the wake of Korea's worst ever personal data breach, the two chairmen of the nation's financial regulators appeared at the National Assembly to outline their plans for handling the crisis. At the Parliamentary Policy Committee on Thursday, Shin Je-yoon, the chairman of the Financial Services Commission, said the regulator will strengthen monitoring of staff at financial firms who deal with data protection and their contractors, and consider whether top executives at financial firms should face suspension or dismissal. Choi Soo-hyun, the governor of the Financial Supervisory Service, said more than 2 million cardholders have canceled their credit cards or applied for new ones since Monday. The three card firms in question are running a 24-hour hotline in conjunction with the FSS to respond to further reports of damages. There are some major changes in how the parliament operates underway. The country's main rival parties have tentatively agreed to split the annual parliamentary audit of the government in two starting this year. The decision was first announced during a meeting of the main opposition Democratic Party's lawmakers Thursday and later confirmed by the ruling Saenuri Party. Under the tentative agreement, the parliament will split the 20-day annual audit of government offices into two parts, with one part in the first half of the year and the other in the second half. The rival parties have also agreed to move up the deadline for the government to submit its annual budget proposal in time for the first of the two audit sessions. The parliament was deadlocked for much of last year due to a standoff between the rival parties, and there have been demands from the public to make parliament more efficient. Over now to Davos, where President Park Geun-hye emphasized the creative economy and entrepreneurship during her opening speech at the World Economic Forum. Our Oh Jin-ju, who's traveling with the president, filed this report.
President Park says the so-called creative economy will be the driving force in, quote, reshaping the world, the theme of this year's World Economic Forum in Davos. In her opening speech at the first session of the global event, President Park pointed to entrepreneurship as the key to realizing a creative economy together with creativity.
We have a saying in Korea, beads are not considered jewelry unless they are woven together. Entrepreneurship is what weaves together the beads of creative ideas into new markets and into new jobs.
The president introduced Seoul's efforts to work towards a creative economy, such as setting up online and offline platforms and a public-private task force to help creative ideas develop into businesses. She vowed to ease any regulations that stand in the way of convergence and the creation of new industries by capping the total volume of regulations and presiding over a ministerial meeting to oversee such efforts. The creative economy, President Park says, could lay the path to overcoming three major challenges facing the world: low growth, high unemployment, and income disparities.
Through startups, as well as the innovation of existing businesses, a creative economy can generate new engines of growth and can grow jobs. There will also be less income inequality, since anyone with a great idea can live out one's dreams by starting a business.
When asked about concerns about the cost of reunification, an issue that keeps foreign investors from pouring money into South Korea, President Park said that reunification would be a jackpot not only for the two Koreas but also for neighboring countries.
통일이 되면은 북한 지역에 대대적인 SOC를 중심으로 한 투자가 일어나게 될 것이고, 또 이런 북한뿐만 아니라 주변국들도 어떤 큰 성장을 기대할 수가 있다.
She explained that the investments would boost other projects in, for example, China's three northeastern provinces and Russia's maritime territory. A notable and unexpected guest in the front row during President Park's speech was Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Many wondered whether the two leaders would meet or have a brief talk, but they didn't. Oh Jin-ju, ARIRANG News, Byrne.
Staying on the World Economic Forum in Davos. For this edition of Business Today, we delve into President Park Geun-hye's idea of a creative economy and what this means for future business endeavors in Korea and around the world. We are now joined by Dr. Kim Byung-ju, the head of KLMP Consulting and a regular commentator on this program, who is with us on the line. Hello, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
We have been hearing the term creative economy for quite some time now, and yet no one seems to have a very clear idea of what it means. But President Park gave one of the best definitions of the concept so far in Davos. What did she say exactly, and what's your assessment?
Right, indeed, I do agree with the observation that the definition that she offered in Davos was the best one so far. And what she was basically saying was the creative economy is a system through which individual ideas can be linked to science, technology, and IT industries, and then allow the industry-to-industry cooperation and also synergy between industry on the one hand and the culture on the other, and by doing so creating more jobs and new markets. And I think that was a very clear idea that has been offered, and I don't remember seeing such kind of clear definition in the past. So indeed, the overall idea seems to be developing, and she did a good job in presenting the idea as a whole. And taking further steps, what she did was she explained this creative economy, the idea itself, will actually help the world address the global issues, particularly under this theme of reshaping the world at the Davos Forum. She said these ideas could actually help the world bridge the new creative divide that comes after the digital divide, which followed in the past material divide. So her overall presentation was a very effective one.
Well, glad to hear that. So what are some of the tangible steps toward realizing a creative economy that President Park outlined in her speech?
Right. Beyond describing the idea itself, she mentioned several specific steps that needs to be taken. In terms of idea, she said for creative economy, barriers for opening businesses need to be removed. And also, we should make sure the financial sector will actually share the risk of opening new businesses together. And overall regulatory system should allow those people who have failed in their initial efforts to come back to the stage and introduce new ideas and try new things. And for those, she introduced those specific measures that Jin-ju just have mentioned about the creative economy town online and how it's moving offline this year. And Korea is trying to realize the overall aspiration of this creative economy into specific actions. And she was mentioning specific cases, and she was also talking about how the government itself is working to remove the barriers in the form of deregulation. So on the case side, going beyond the overall idea, she did effective work.
President Park also stressed that pursuing a creative economy is the solution for tackling major challenges in the global economy, such as low growth and high unemployment. What was her argument?
Yeah, in order to overcome the global challenge of low growth and high unemployment, as well as the imbalance in income polarization, she meant by that. She said this overall creative economy could actually provide the overall engine for the world to move ahead in achieving sustainable growth and more inclusive growth, because this is different form of a paradigm that goes beyond the old paradigms of manufacturing era. She says this will be possible. So indeed, she will not only explain the overall idea, but also explain the cases. She also linked her idea to the global concerns and issues. So in that sense, I think, once again, very positive performance.
Well, turning now to another VIP at the forum, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe also gave a speech in Davos. What were his key points, and how was the argument different from that of President Park Geun-hye?
Basically, what Prime Minister Abe was doing was he explained the idea of Abenomics, which we are familiar with three fronts: bold monetary policy, flexible fiscal policy, and encouraging private investment. And he was talking about how Japan is actually coming back based on these new policy lines. And he was emphasizing Japan's emphasis on TPP and other efforts to encourage further growth of knowledge, trade, and investment. The way I saw it, he delivered a very smooth job indeed, and he explained his ideas quite effectively in a more smooth manner than perhaps President Park. President Park was much better in clarity and precision of describing her ideas, and on the other hand, Abe was sometimes confusing in his delivery, but he was smooth. But the thing is, content-wise, unlike President Park, who delivered new ideas, new contents, I think Prime Minister Abe stuck with all the ideas and rather ideas that we are familiar with. So on that side, there was that downside.
Well, lastly, some say that the World Economic Forum in Davos has lost some of its fame and glory over the years, but it seems like the Davos Forum is still an important venue for world leaders to share their policy ideas, as seen in the case of President Park Geun-hye, for instance. What is your assessment of the significance and limitations of the Davos Forum?
It is true that in terms of the global consensus, Davos Forum itself has somewhat relatively lost its relevance in comparison with 10 years ago, for instance, and it has the repetition of just being rich man's club and all that, and there is much criticism coming from the progressive side. But the thing is, the way I see it, Korean government and President Park made the right choice to present her ideas and share ideas at this very important forum, because what we want to do is we want to be on the side of the leaders, global leaders, keeping in mind that Korean economy is approaching one of the world's top 10 economies. So we have to take this stance, and we have to take this position and present our ideas in forums like that. So in that sense, the choice of the venue itself was an optimal one, the way I see it.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Kim, for the insight with us, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Well, speaking of creativity and innovation in Korea, Korea has been ranked the most innovative country in the world. That's according to Bloomberg, which gave Korea 92.1 out of 100 for its ability to innovate. This year, Bloomberg's annual survey looked at 215 countries to determine how innovative they are based on 7 factors: R&D intensity, productivity, high-tech density, researcher concentration, manufacturing capability, tertiary efficiency, and patent activity. Korea ranked second in patent activity and manufacturing capability and had the weakest performance in productivity, ranking 33rd. Overall, Sweden was the second most innovative country, followed by the US, China, and Japan. The Korean economy appears to be moving into a phase of stable recovery. The central bank says the private sector is waking up from years of slumber to drive growth, although a major government spending cut forced a slightly lower growth rate in the October to December period. ARIRANG's Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
There are signs that domestic demand is picking up steam, and growth in coming months is expected to be more balanced between exports and domestic activities. The Bank of Korea said Thursday that the economy grew 0.9% in the fourth quarter of last year from the previous quarter. That's slightly down from a 1.1% gain in the July to September period, but it was largely because of a major cutback in fiscal spending, prompted by less than expected tax revenues towards the end of the year.
The national tax incomes dropped last year by 1.1 trillion won, or roughly $1 billion from 2012, and that resulted in a drop in government spending. This was the major factor of the slower growth in Q4.
The central bank added that the fourth quarter growth was encouraged by rising domestic demand, which is expected to help speed up growth. It also confirmed that the economy grew 2.8% for all of 2013 from the previous year, as earlier projected. That compares with a 2% growth in 2012 and represented a reversal of a 2-year slowdown. The recovery came from rising exports, growing private consumption, and construction investment. The central bank said that the Korean economy will likely continue its recovery and forecast a growth of 3.8% for 2014 and 4% for 2015. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Let's now take a look at how the market closed here in Seoul. Shares traded lower this Thursday as investors awaited earnings reports by major listed companies. At the closing bell, the benchmark Kospi dropped 1.2% to finish at 1947, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq edged down to 522. The Korean currency closed at 1,073 won against the greenback. Online shopping is fast overtaking the traditional retail kind in wired Korea, where so much of what you want and need is just one click away. Our Connie Kim has more on the growth of this trend.
Shin Je-yoon is one of the many shoppers who prefers to purchase products online. From books and dog food to laptop computer cases, Kim clicks away on items that were on her shopping list. The changing landscape of technology is responsible for the change in the way people shop. Instead of heading out to stores, people now use their PCs and smartphones to buy what they want and need.
I just bought dog food. It's much cheaper than retail stores or veterinary. I also have a variety of options to choose from, and promotional events are a special bonus.
The online shopping market has seen steady growth at an annual rate of around 20% over the past 3 years, while the traditional method of shopping at retail stores grew by just 3 to 5% over the same period.
The biggest reason for the boom in online shopping is convenience and price competitiveness. The profits come from a wide customer base located around the nation.
From one-day delivery services to curated commerce, where customers are offered unique and personalized products, services have evolved to cater to different palettes. This year, the overall market size of online shopping is expected to exceed $45 billion, surpassing the retail store market for the first time.
Online shopping has been around for about 20 years, but the increase in purchases from smartphones is contributing to the growth of the market.
With an explosive growth of mobile shopping among smartphone users, shopping on the go will be the new drive in the industry. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Turning now to the bird flu crisis here in Korea. More dead ducks found in a river in southern Korea suggests the virus is spreading. Officials say it is highly likely that 5 ducks found dead in the Kumgang River in the central part of the country were killed by the bird flu virus. The dead ducks were found about 50 kilometers north of Gochang County in the southern province of Jeollabuk-do, where the highly pathogenic H5N8 strain of avian influenza was first detected. This comes after officials announced that bean geese were also found to be carrying the strain, along with Baikal teal ducks. So far, bird flu has been confirmed at a total of 8 farms in Korea. Some 300,000 ducks and chickens have been killed since the virus was first confirmed a few days ago. And Korea is not the only country in Asia battling an outbreak of animal illness. In Vietnam, an increasing number of people are falling foul to swine flu, with 2 high school students, the latest, confirmed as suffering from the H1N1 strain of the virus. Local media outlets report, citing quarantine authorities, that 11 other high school students in the capital, Hanoi, are undergoing tests to see whether they have also contracted it. The students were also hospitalized after complaining of high fevers and coughs. The results of a closer examination are expected soon. Switching gears now, the Korean trade official who was abducted in Libya earlier this week has been rescued and is safe and unharmed. Korea's foreign ministry confirmed Thursday that Han Seo-gu, the head of the Libya unit of the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency, is in good health and has been safely transferred to the Korean embassy in Tripoli after being freed by Libyan security forces. The release comes 3 days after Han was captured by a group of unidentified armed men on his way home from work. After an interview with the embassy about his abduction, Han is expected to travel to the Mediterranean island of Malta to see his family and will return to Korea with them. Representatives of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and the main opposition group traded fiery exchanges Wednesday on the first day of a major peace conference in Switzerland intended to lead the country out of civil war. Our Son Jung-in reports.
Wednesday's talks, involving 40 or so foreign ministers, ended with little progress.
The much-anticipated international talks are aimed at bringing peace to the country. However, both the Syrian regime and the Western-backed main opposition group refuse to compromise on the future role of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in the transitional government. Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim said that only the Syrian people could decide the fate of President Assad and called on foreign powers to stop supporting terrorism and to lift sanctions against Damascus.
If you are really worried about the humanitarian situation in Syria, then take your hands off us and lift the sanctions and the siege on the Syrian people.
Opposition leader Ahmed Jarba accused Assad of war crimes and demanded the Syrian government delegation sign on to an international plan for a transfer of power. Siding with the opposition, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said Assad should have no place in a transitional government. And Syria's envoy to the United Nations, Bashar al-Jarafi, said that Damascus needed support to negotiate with the opposition to implement a 2012 Geneva Communique that calls for a transitional government and said that the terrorism must also end. During the talks, there were few signs that any party was ready to make concessions. UN leader Ban Ki-moon said that the hard work begins on Friday, when direct discussions will begin in Geneva, and urged Syria's regime and opposition to work together to end the bloodshed. Son Jang-in, ARIRANG News.
The U.S. government is calling on Korea and Japan to come to an agreement on how the body of water between the two countries should be identified. U.S. State Department Deputy Spokesperson Marie Harf said in a press briefing Wednesday that Washington will continue to use the name Sea of Japan to refer to the body of water, in line with the U.S. Board on Geographic Names. She rejected the idea of using both East Sea and Sea of Japan, saying it is a long-standing U.S. policy to use only one name for the sake of clarity. Korea considers the name Sea of Japan a legacy of Japan's imperial past, as it came into use during Japan's colonial rule of Korea in the early 20th century. Turning to Ukraine now, which appears to be descending into chaos. Opposition leaders have issued an ultimatum to the president following talks that failed to answer their demands amid anti-government protests that turned deadly on Wednesday. Our Shin Je-yoon has more.
Ukrainian opposition leaders have issued an ultimatum to President Viktor Yanukovych: call elections within 24 hours or prepare for the worst, following the first death in a crisis that's rocked the country for 2 months. The opposition leaders emerged from talks with the president on Wednesday, aimed at quelling the escalating violence in Kiev, saying the talks have failed, with leader Vitaly Klitschko calling on supporters to prepare for a police offensive. The opposition also wants the government dismissed and harsh new anti-protest laws scrapped. The protests turned deadly Wednesday as Ukrainian riot police clashed with protesters in Kiev. These were the first fatalities since protests began in November after Yanukovych walked away from a planned treaty with the European Union in favor of closer economic ties with Russia. Protesters gathered in Independence Square, but things escalated quickly when riot police began dismantling the main protest camp there. 2 men were shot dead in the violence that followed, with hundreds of protesters injured. The European Union has threatened to take action against Ukraine over its crackdown on the anti-government protests. European Commission President José Manuel Barroso said the EU was shocked by the fatalities and would have to rethink its relationship with Ukraine with possible consequences. Shin Je-yoon, ARIRANG News.
Samsung has been dealt another legal blow in its patent war with Apple. Judge Lucy Koh, who presided over another dispute between the two tech giants 2 years ago, has ruled that Samsung infringed on Apple's autocomplete text patent. The autocomplete function suggests completed words after a user has part-typed them, so messages can be inputted more quickly. The judge also threw out Samsung's claim that Apple had infringed on one of its synchronization patents, on the grounds that the patent should have never been granted in the first place. This means Apple will allege 5 cases of patent infringement when both firms go into court on March 31st, while Samsung will bring in 4. Let's now get a quick check on the weather conditions around the world. That's all from us for this hour. More news updates coming your way on Early Edition at 6. Do join us then.